In 1863, a 24-year-old clerk invested $4,000 in an oil refinery in Cleveland, Ohio. 50 years later, he controlled 90% of America's oil, owned the equivalent of $400 billion in today's money, and had built a machine that still runs your life in 2025. His name was John Davison Rockefeller, and the system he engineered, the corporate architecture he invented, the monopolistic blueprint he perfected, it did not disappear when Standard Oil was shattered in 1911. It metastasized. It evolved into every structure that controls modern commerce. Every merger you see announced, every industry dominated by three corporations, every tech platform that cannot be competed with, every pharmaceutical company that sets its own prices, every bank too big to fail, they are all running Rockefeller's code. The gasoline in your tank comes from his descendants. The medicine in your cabinet was approved through systems he designed. The monopolies you cannot avoid were built using his manual. And here is what should terrify you. The breakup of Standard Oil in 1911 did not destroy Rockefeller. It made him 3 times richer, because he understood something that every monopolist since has copied. You do not build a company. You build a system, and systems are immortal. Let me show you exactly how one man created the template for corporate control that has extracted trillions from the American economy for 150 years, and why you cannot escape it no matter what choices you think you are making. John Rockefeller was born July 8, 1839 in upstate New York. His father was a bigamist and a con artist who sold fake cancer cures. His mother was a deeply religious Baptist who drilled discipline and thrift into her children. This combination, the con man's ruthlessness married to the believer's moral certainty, created something dangerous. A man who could destroy competitors without hesitation while believing God had ordained him to bring order to chaos. Rockefeller did not see himself as a criminal. He saw himself as a missionary. His monopoly was not theft, it was divine organization. This was not hypocrisy. This was conviction. And conviction is what makes monopolists unstoppable. In 1859, oil was struck in Titusville, Pennsylvania. The rush began. Thousands of speculators flooded western Pennsylvania to drill wells. Fortunes appeared overnight and vanished by morning. Overproduction crashed prices. Then shortages spiked them. It was pure chaos. Boom, bust, opportunity in drilling. Find oil, get rich, lose it all, repeat. Rockefeller saw something different. He saw that drilling was gambling. You could not control geology. You could not control luck. But refining, turning crude oil into kerosene for lamps, that was predictable. That was a business. In 1863, Rockefeller and a partner invested $4,000 in a refinery in Cleveland. Within 2 years, it was the largest refinery in the city. But Cleveland had dozens of refineries. Competition was brutal. Profit margins were razor thin. Most refineries operated on the edge of bankruptcy, constantly vulnerable to price swings and supply disruptions. This is the moment that separates Rockefeller from every other businessman of his era. He did not try to compete. He tried to eliminate competition as a concept, and he did it through a strategy that would become the foundation of every monopoly built since. Vertical integration. Here is how it worked. Most refineries bought crude oil from drillers, refined it into kerosene, and sold it to distributors. They controlled one step in a multi-step process. Every other step was controlled by someone else taking profit. Rockefeller decided to own every step. He bought the cooperatives that made barrels, so he did not pay barrel makers. He bought timberlands to supply the wood for those barrels. He purchased tank cars to transport oil, negotiating rates so favorable that railroads paid him rebates. He built his own pipelines, eliminating railroads entirely for short distances. He constructed warehouses for storage. He established his own distribution networks to deliver kerosene directly to retailers. Every stage that used to generate profit for an outside party, Rockefeller brought inside Standard Oil. This gave him cost advantages no competitor could match. While rivals paid market rates at every stage, Rockefeller operated at cost. He could undercut any competitor on price while maintaining profitability. This was not innovation. This was warfare disguised as efficiency. By 1870, Rockefeller had consolidated his Cleveland operations into Standard Oil Company of Ohio. His refinery was the most efficient in the nation, but he still controlled only 10% of American refining capacity. That was unacceptable, because 10% meant he had competitors. And competitors meant instability, price wars, wasted capital, inefficiency. Rockefeller wanted control, total control. So he launched phase two, horizontal integration. If vertical integration is owning the supply chain, horizontal integration is eliminating everyone at your level. In 1872, Rockefeller initiated what became known as the Cleveland Massacre. Over 3 months, he systematically approached every refinery owner in Cleveland. His offer was simple: sell to me now at a fair price, or I will destroy you and buy your assets at bankruptcy auction. Most owners thought he was bluffing. They were wrong. Rockefeller would drop kerosene prices below cost. His vertically integrated operation could survive losses that bankrupted competitors within weeks. When a rival refinery collapsed, Rockefeller bought it for pennies. If an owner agreed to sell, Rockefeller paid fairly and often kept them on as managers. If they resisted, he crushed them without mercy and bought the ruins. By April 1872, Rockefeller controlled 25 of Cleveland's 26 refineries. In 3 months, he went from 10% of American refining to nearly 25%. This was the blueprint. Every monopoly since has followed it. Make an offer. If they refuse, destroy them economically, then acquire the wreckage. Amazon does this with pricing. Google does this with search dominance. Meta does this with acquisitions. The tactics are Rockefeller's, only the industry changed. But Cleveland was just the beginning. Through the 1870s, Rockefeller expanded Standard Oil across America using the same method everywhere. He negotiated secret rebate agreements with railroads. Railroads charged Standard Oil lower rates than competitors. In some cases, railroads even paid Standard Oil a portion of the fees they collected from competing refineries. This was not illegal. This was business. Rockefeller controlled so much shipping volume that railroads could not afford to lose him. So they gave him terms that guaranteed his competitors could never match his costs. He bought refineries in New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, every major refining center in America. By 1879, Standard Oil controlled 90% of American oil refining. 90%. This was not a company. This was a monopoly so complete that the word monopoly became synonymous with Rockefeller. But controlling 90% of an industry creates two problems. First, it is illegal, or it would be once Congress got around to passing antitrust laws. Second, it is hated. Rockefeller became the most despised man in America. Newspapers called him a robber baron, an octopus strangling American commerce. Political cartoons depicted Standard Oil as a monster with tentacles wrapped around the nation. Public fury was building. Rockefeller needed a solution that would let him keep control while deflecting legal and political attacks. In 1882, his lawyers created the answer: the Standard Oil Trust. This was revolutionary. Standard Oil of Ohio could not legally own refineries in other states. State corporate laws prohibited it, but a trust could. Rockefeller created a trust that held stock in 41 separate Standard Oil companies operating across the country. 9 trustees, all Rockefeller allies, controlled. This was the first major corporate trust in American history. It became the template for every trust that followed. Steel, sugar, tobacco, railroads. All copied Rockefeller's structure. The trust was not a company. It was a holding company. It did not refine oil or produce anything. It simply owned the companies that did. This structure would evolve into the modern corporation, the parent company owning subsidiaries. Alphabet owns Google and YouTube. Meta owns Facebook and Instagram. Berkshire Hathaway owns insurance companies, railroads, and utilities. They are all descendants of the Standard Oil Trust. This structure does 3 things. First, it centralizes control while maintaining the appearance of separate companies. Second, it shields the parent from liability and subsidiary operations. Third, it makes breakup nearly impossible because you cannot simply dissolve one entity. You have to untangle an entire web. By 1904, Standard Oil controlled 91% of oil refining and 85% of final sales in America. Rockefeller was worth $900 million, equivalent to $25 billion today. But his real peak came later. In 1913, adjusted for inflation, Rockefeller was worth $400 billion. Richer than Bezos. Richer than Musk. Richer than anyone in modern history. He achieved this through the system: vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, legal structures that concentrated control, ruthless elimination of competition. This was not luck. This was engineering. But by 1900, public anger had reached a breaking point. In 1890, Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, outlawing monopolies. In 1906, journalist Ida Tarbell published The History of the Standard Oil Company, a devastating expose of Rockefeller's tactics, secret railroad rebates, predatory pricing, industrial espionage, crushing competitors through economic warfare. The evidence was overwhelming. In 1911, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously. Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly. It had to be broken up. The court ordered Standard Oil dissolved into 34 separate companies. This should have destroyed Rockefeller. It did the opposite. Here is what the government did not understand. When you break up a monopoly but the same person owns all the pieces, you have not eliminated the monopoly. You have just reorganized it. Rockefeller owned shares in all 34 companies. Standard Oil of New Jersey became Exxon. Standard Oil of New York became Mobil. Standard Oil of California became Chevron. Standard Oil of Indiana became Amoco. Standard Oil of Ohio became Sohio, later absorbed by BP. Before the breakup, Standard Oil stock traded at roughly $600 per share. After the breakup, the combined value of the 34 successor companies exceeded $2,000 per share. Rockefeller's wealth tripled. Why? Because forcing 34 companies to compete independently drove innovation, efficiency, and market expansion. Each company grew, and Rockefeller owned them all. The breakup that was supposed to punish him made him the richest man in history. And here is the truly diabolical part. Those 34 companies have been reconsolidating ever since. Exxon and Mobil merged in 1999, creating ExxonMobil. Chevron absorbed Gulf Oil and Standard Oil of Kentucky. BP bought Amoco and Sohio. The Standard Oil monopoly that was shattered in 1911 has quietly reassembled itself over 110 years. Today, 3 companies control most of what Standard Oil once monopolized: ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP. The system broke itself apart to survive legal attack, then patiently reconstructed itself once public attention moved on. This is the genius of the system. It is not tied to one company. It is a method, a blueprint, and that blueprint has been copied by every dominant corporation since. Amazon uses vertical integration exactly as Rockefeller did. Amazon started as an online bookstore. Now it owns the warehouses, the logistics network, the delivery trucks, the payment processing, the cloud servers that host competitor websites. Amazon Web Services generates $90 billion annually, more than Amazon's retail profit. Rockefeller owned refineries, railroads, and distribution. Amazon owns retail, logistics, and internet infrastructure. Same playbook, 140 years later. Amazon also uses horizontal consolidation. It has acquired over 100 companies: Whole Foods, Zappos, Ring, Twitch. When it cannot buy a competitor, it uses data from its own marketplace to identify successful products, creates Amazon Basics versions, and promotes them above the originals. This is Rockefeller's price war, updated for the digital age. Legal, barely regulated, devastatingly effective. Google operates as a trust. Alphabet is a holding company that owns Google, YouTube, Waymo, DeepMind, Verily, and dozens of subsidiaries. This is the Standard Oil Trust, one parent company controlling multiple operating entities. The structure shields the parent from subsidiary liability, allows tax optimization across jurisdictions, and makes regulatory breakup legally complex because each subsidiary can claim to be independent. Pharmaceutical companies use Rockefeller's regulatory capture strategy. Rockefeller did not just compete in markets, he shaped the rules. He lobbied for railroad regulations that favored Standard Oil. He worked with politicians to set kerosene purity standards his refineries met but competitors could not. Today, pharmaceutical companies fund the FDA through user fees. They lobby for patent extensions. They write the regulations governing their own industry. Pfizer, Merck, Johnson & Johnson learned from Rockefeller. Control the regulators and you control the market. Financial institutions use holding company structures. J.P. Morgan Chase is a holding company that owns Chase Bank, J.P. Morgan Investment Bank, and numerous subsidiaries. Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, all holding companies. When Dodd-Frank attempted to regulate banks after 2008, this structure made enforcement nearly impossible. Which entity do you regulate? The parent or the subsidiaries? Rockefeller solved this problem in 1882 with the trust. Banks copied it 130 years later. And then there is philanthropy. Rockefeller's final and most enduring innovation. In 1913, Rockefeller established the Rockefeller Foundation with an initial endowment of $250 million, over $7 billion today. The foundation funded medical research, public health, and education. On the surface, this was charity. Rockefeller giving back his fortune to society, but examine it closely. The foundation allowed Rockefeller to avoid estate taxes, transferring wealth to a tax-exempt entity he controlled. It gave him influence over universities and research institutions. Which schools received funding? What research got financed? What medical models were taught? The Rockefeller Foundation funded Johns Hopkins, the University of Chicago, Rockefeller University. It established the model for medical education that emphasized pharmaceutical treatments over preventive or holistic care. This is not conspiracy. This is documented. The foundation shaped American medicine to favor the pharmaceutical model, and pharmaceutical companies, many emerging from Standard Oil's chemical divisions, profited enormously. Most importantly, the foundation bought legitimacy. The man who destroyed thousands of businesses, who crushed competitors without mercy, who was despised as a ruthless monopolist, became a beloved philanthropist. Rockefeller's transformation from robber baron to benefactor was carefully engineered through strategic giving. By the time he died in 1937, his public image had been completely rehabilitated. Today, every billionaire uses the Rockefeller playbook. Bill Gates created the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, $75 billion in assets. It shapes WHO policy, influences national health systems, and funds research that aligns with pharmaceutical solutions. Mark Zuckerberg established the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. Elon Musk has his foundation. These are not just charity. They are tax avoidance, legacy management, and policy influence. Rockefeller invented this model. Modern billionaires perfected it. Here is what makes Rockefeller different from other industrial titans of his era. Andrew Carnegie built U.S. Steel. When he sold it and retired, his personal control ended. The company continued, but Carnegie's dominance was over. Cornelius Vanderbilt built railroads. After his death, the empire fragmented. J.P. Morgan built financial power. His death weakened Morgan control over banking. But Rockefeller built a system, and systems do not die with their creators. They replicate. Standard Oil was broken up in 1911, but vertical integration spread to every industry. The trust structure became the holding company. Regulatory capture became lobbying. Philanthropy became foundations. Every piece of Rockefeller's system was copied, refined, and embedded into American corporate law, tax code, and regulatory framework. The system is self-perpetuating. It concentrates wealth, it eliminates competition, it captures regulators, it uses philanthropy to buy social license while avoiding taxes. This is not conspiracy, this is structure. Legal, accepted, replicated by every dominant company in every industry. You cannot buy gasoline outside the descendants of Standard Oil. You cannot avoid Amazon's logistics. You cannot opt out of pharmaceutical systems shaped by Rockefeller grants. You cannot escape banking built on Rockefeller's holding company model. You live inside the system Rockefeller designed, and the system extracts wealth from you every day. Here is the mechanism. You need gasoline. Your choices appear to be Exxon, Chevron, Shell, BP. But these are price-coordinated oligopolies descended from Standard Oil or using its methods. You are not choosing. You are selecting among branches of the same tree. You need online shopping. Amazon dominates through vertical integration. Walmart and Target must match Amazon's scale or die. Same system, different companies. You need internet search. Google holds 92% market share. That is higher than Standard Oil's peak of 91%. But Google is not considered a monopoly because the service appears free. You pay with data instead of money. Rockefeller would have admired this innovation. A monopoly so complete that users do not realize they are customers. You need social media. Facebook has 3 billion users. Instagram, also Meta. WhatsApp, also Meta. You are not choosing platforms. You are choosing which Meta property to use. The average American spends thousands annually on gasoline, online shopping, technology services, and healthcare. Over a lifetime, hundreds of thousands of dollars flow to corporations using Rockefeller's 150-year-old tactics. And you cannot escape. You could refuse gasoline, but you need transportation for work. You could refuse Amazon, but competitive pricing makes alternatives impractical. You could refuse Google, but no alternative has comparable reach. You could refuse Meta, but social connection is controlled by its platforms. This is Rockefeller's ultimate achievement. Not wealth, not power. A system that makes escape impossible, where every path leads to consolidated corporate control, where competition is crushed before it threatens incumbents, where regulators protect industry instead of consumers, where philanthropy buys influence that perpetuates control. But here is what most people miss. The system is not evil, it is efficient. Vertical integration reduces costs, horizontal consolidation eliminates wasteful duplication, regulatory clarity provides stability. Foundations fund real research. The system works. Standard Oil cut kerosene prices from 58 cents per gallon to 8 cents. That is an 86% reduction. That is not exploitation. That is efficiency. Amazon delivers in 2 days. Google answers every question instantly. ExxonMobil produces gasoline at scale. Pfizer develops effective drugs. The system delivers value. The problem is not that it fails to work. The problem is that it concentrates wealth at the top while delivering efficiency at the bottom. You get cheap gas, fast shipping, instant information, and effective medicine. Rockefeller's heirs get trillions in accumulated wealth. Both are true. So what do you do with a system you cannot escape? 3 options. Accept it. Understand that consolidation is a feature of capitalism, not a bug. Use the efficiencies. Buy from Amazon. Search with Google. Accept that wealth concentrates. Resist it. Support antitrust enforcement. Buy from small businesses. Use inferior alternatives. Vote for politicians promising to break up monopolies. Trade efficiency for decentralization, or understand it and position accordingly. If you cannot escape the system, own pieces of it. Buy stock in the dominant companies. If the system extracts wealth from everyone and funnels it to consolidated corporations, own those corporations. This is what Rockefeller did. He owned Standard Oil while everyone else bought its products. He extracted wealth from the system he built. You can do the same at smaller scale. John D. Rockefeller died in 1937 at age 97. He lived long enough to see Standard Oil broken up, then begin reconsolidating. He lived to see his methods spread across every industry. He lived to see his foundation reshape American medicine and education. He lived to see his grandchildren positioned at the apex of American finance. He built a system that has outlived him by 88 years and will outlive all of us. The system is vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, holding companies, regulatory capture, and philanthropic influence. It started with Standard Oil. It spread to every sector, and you cannot escape it. You can only see it. Rockefeller said competition is a sin. He did not mean that as greed. He meant it theologically. Competition is wasteful. It duplicates effort. It destroys capital. Consolidation is righteous. It creates efficiency. Monopoly is not theft. It is the natural end state of efficient markets. This was Rockefeller's belief, and he built a system to prove it. 150 years later, we live in that system. Amazon eliminates retail competition. Google eliminates search competition. Meta eliminates social media competition. ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP control oil. Pfizer, Merck, Johnson & Johnson control pharmaceuticals. JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citi control banking. The consolidation Rockefeller began has reached its logical endpoint. 3 to 5 dominant players in every industry, all using his playbook. And consolidation continues. Every year, fewer companies control more market share. Every year, barriers to entry rise. Every year, escape becomes more impossible. This is the Rockefeller system, not Standard Oil. The method, and methods are eternal because they work. John D. Rockefeller created a system you cannot escape. Vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, regulatory capture, philanthropic influence. That system is the modern economy, and you are living inside it right now.